Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Got Micah here with me today, the author of Mentally Diseased, uh,
Mm.
ex-Jehovah's Witness, and boy, what a story you got, man. You know,
Yeah,
what a
it's
story you got.
it's a
Let's get
tale.
into it.
So hold me close, nothing lasts forever. Oh, when I go, will you remember?
Within despair, among decadence, and before a promised embrace, distractions are burdens as I await his forgotten face. If angels fall, are demons redeemed? There are cracks in the armor of your holy regime. Certainly, once you've gone so far, return is a betrayal of self. There are limits to what I can disbelieve. The faithful devout are devoured by doubt. The truth, like blood, waits to get out. Apathy for the dogma, antipathy for the devotee. Bliss lies in ignorance. Are you lying to me? If death won't have me, perhaps sleep will. Contentment in cycles, but none of it real.
Let's start off. I usually like to start off how did you become a Jehovah Witness? Were you born into it? Did you come in later?
I was born in. My parents joined in the late 70s. I don't. I can't ask them now, but it was either I think they had someone knock at their door in the late 70s, and then I was born in December of 82, and they were both baptized. And they were pretty disenfranchised from both sides of their families. So I just had my parents, and the congregation was, an extension of my family.
So, did your parents come in as a result of the whole 1975 doctrine?
So I don't know. I was probably 17 or so before I even heard of the 1975 debacle. My parents lived in the same apartment complex, and my mom just and dad just never really told me about that. It was kind of always thinking forward, thinking towards paradise. And so there were even times when I asked about my parents' past, and that they wouldn't tell me.
Okay. So, if you wouldn't mind, then let's talk about your childhood and growing up as a JW kid. Because I mean, of course, I was a JW kid myself, so I obviously know you don't have the holidays or birthdays or anything like that. But I know your story is more intense than mine was. So tell me what it was like for you.
So my dad was a mail carrier. He grew up exceptionally poor. He lived in Brooklyn, Indiana, which I've never been to, but evidently there's a very large dump or landfill. And his parents had um, 6 or 7 children. I really don't know. But they lived in that dump at one time. I remember my dad talking about trying to sleep as a little boy and rats biting him. And so he came from terrible abuse and poverty. And my mother had 2 sisters that died. One was 9, one was 14.
Oh,
Her mother
jeez.
died when she was 5. Her twin brother died when they were both 37. Of course, there were witnesses at the time, but they both came from such trauma.
Mm-hmm.
What I estimate is that they met and maybe bonded over that, and then somebody knocked at the door and offered to fix everything, fix all their problems, and fix all of these issues. So I really don't know if they were around in 75 or not. I just don't know. I really wish I did, but I don't.
Well, I mean, even still though, like what you were saying, that's something the witnesses do is they prey on those vulnerable people who are poor and have these traumas in their lives and looking for these answers. And then they come by, like you said, and they have all the answers to everything. They're not the right answers, but they're answers. And people fall for this tactic all the time. And that's how they get lured into cults.
Yeah, it's hard. You were in a cult. I don't judge you. I don't judge anybody, but for myself, it's even though I was born in and it's all I knew. How did I believe it? It really upsets me and it makes me feel stupid. But it's not about stupidity or intelligence. It's about if you're suffering and the right circumstances and right time, and somebody shows up and says, "Hey, you want this," and I'm the only one who can give it to you. If you buy into that, then they got their hooks in you and they can pull you and lead
Yep.
you and do whatever they want.
Well, and the thing is though, when you're born into a cult, it's all you ever know.
Yeah.
And so when you're a child, you have that trust in your parents that they're doing what's best for you. So you're going to believe what they tell you to believe. You're going to do what they tell you to do because biologically we know as a species that's the safest thing for a child to do,
Yeah.
generally speaking, obviously.
Yeah.
And so that child is going to do that because that's in his nature to do that, and not really go outside of those confines because that's the safest place for him to be in. And the problem is when you're in a cult and you are being traumatized yourself as a child, you still feel like that's the safe place for you to be in because it's still all you know.
Exactly. And when you're mistreated or whatever, you more often than not you're taught that, oh, it's my own sinful inclination, or this person has been really cruel to me or bullied me or hit me and there's no reason for it, but it's like you need to be the bigger person. And sure, that's true if two kids are fighting over a coloring book or something, but when it comes to mental, physical abuse or sexual abuse, it's just so perverse that you're taught that it's your fault or you need to not say anything because it could shame the group. But that's what they do. We Jehovah's Witnesses are taught hatred, but they're
Mhm.
told it's love. And if you don't know that, you have to get away from it. And I don't even feel like it can be realized all at once. For me, there are waves where it's just like, man, I really was a piece of shit. I
Yeah.
mean, you're not taught to be a good person. You're just not.
Oh no, especially when you're taught with the belief that when Armageddon comes, you're of the 0.01% of the world that's going to survive, and all these billions of people are going to be slaughtered by your God so you can build your paradise over it. That's
Yeah.
what you're taught.
Yeah. And Jehovah is a capricious God. As he's ineffectual. As far as a deity, I am not impressed. But he's capricious. It's ridiculous. The concept of new light doesn't hold up to scrutiny.
Mm-mm.
All of that stuff. He's just, because I think about my mother expects Armageddon to come imminently, and Jehovah will kill me, her only child, who is a despicable apostate, but she'll then be she'll have the memory of me, but not the pain attached with knowing that her God killed me, which is sociopathic. To it's just crazy. If you take the attributes of Jehovah and put them into any human being, it very quickly becomes scary territory.
Oh yeah. And I mean, and we have plenty of examples of human beings like that in history. And what did we do with them? You know, like you go to Hitler,
Right.
obviously he took himself out, but we we didn't want to let him keep on going because what he was doing was absolutely re- re- repulsive, you know? And you got other people like Bundy and these other serial killers. We get rid of them. We get them off the streets. But
Yeah.
your God, oh no, it's okay if he does it.
Yeah. Well, and what is Jehovah going to do with Hitler and Ted Bundy and Stalin? probably resurrect them so they can be involved in the greatest education work. But me, because I was baptized as a child and don't believe anymore, I deserve to be murdered.
Yeah.
It,
And that's how every religion is too. Not just Jehovah's Witnesses, every other religion out there. Pretty much, if you don't believe in their version of it, you're going to hell. You're going to die Armageddon, whatever it is. And then all the bad people who didn't get a chance, oh well, or repented at their last breath. Okay, they get the reward. It's all
yeah,
bullshit.
it's yeah, it's the lottery. For one, it's the genetic lottery that you're born into the true religion and you're one of the chosen ones.
Hmm.
And then you have to, you know, I was thinking about, I remember one time I dropped something on my foot and I said shit. And then as I'm laying in bed that night, I'm like, well, because I prayed immediately, Heavenly Father, please forgive me for using obscene language. Help me to root out this, bad habit. And then I'm laying there and I'm like, well, I cursed today. What if Armageddon comes in the night or in the morning and I cursed and it just moved the needle a hair to where I'm not deserving? It's
And then they put that onus on children to have to think
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
So as a child, you're thinking, I'm going to be killed at Armageddon because I said shit.
Yeah.
Like,
And
how fucked up is that, really? And
yeah.
it just keeps on compounding as you get older, and it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
So, and let's talk a little bit more about your childhood then. Like, what was your relationship with like with your parents and within the congregation and the people there that within?
So my father was always looked up to. I know, like, if my dad had a problem with you, he would come and knock on your door and talk to you. My dad he wasn't a abusive man. He wasn't punching people, but he would look you in the eyes and tell you exactly what he thought. But I remember a lot of people in the congregation really looked up to my dad. And I mean, I did, of course. Most little boys do, but my father really was my hero. But he was busy. He provided for us. He worked his job. He would work part-time jobs. He also went to college on and off. He liked to go to the gym. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom. And my mom did a lot of the uh, studying with me. My father, I know he would get up very early to deliver the mail, but Sunday mornings he would get up real early and go to McDonald's and study the Watchtower by himself. And he didn't study with me. And I remember my mom mentioning it or saying, like, I don't know, he pushed it on her. I don't know. It's weird because I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I know that I really don't have any memory of my parents fighting. I know there were times when their bedroom door was shut and maybe they were talking. Maybe I could tell there was some tension. They were irritated with each other, which is common.
Hmm.
But as far as I find it odd that I just don't remember that. I feel like I should have one memory of them arguing in the car or any, it just never happened. And we went along living our lives. And, it was back then in the 80s and early 90s, it was 3 meetings a week. So it was go to school, come home, prepare for the meeting, or go to meeting. Usually we would go out and service once a week on the weekend, um, and spend time with my friends. I remember being well liked. I remember that I liked making people laugh, doing silly things. And I don't have a lot of memories, but what I remember, they were pretty pleasant. And then uh, when I was 12, my father was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
And he, of course, in like 95,
he was going for chemo, and they couldn't really, localize it to his kidney, which is where it was. So he was 6'2", broad shouldered, and the I have memories of him puking for hours in a bucket in the basement, or because my dad liked to eat a lot. We would go to, after Sunday meetings, we would go to this Mexican restaurant named Chi-Chi's or Ponderosa. I always called it Ponderosa, or like the Sizzler, and we would just sit there for hours because my dad's best friend delivered Coca-Cola, and he was a fit guy. He could bench press like 500 pounds, crazy strong, and they could just eat 10, 12 plates of food. And I'm a kid, and I'm like, okay, I was bored all morning in church, or at the Kingdom Hall. Can we leave? Like, I've been full for 2 hours, but my dad, he did what he could to fight cancer, kill it. And I think the chemo just killed him. I think it ate him up along with the cancer.
Wow. So how long did he battle with cancer for before he passed away?
I don't remember much. I just have a few like flashing memories. Like I remember waiting in a cold room at a doctor, and I remember my dad's jacket and mine. I want to say it was about a year, and he died.
And that's got to be tough, man. I mean, I couldn't imagine, especially being that age, because that's one of those ages where, in a lot of ways, going forward from there, it's going to determine how you are as a person, how you handle it and how those around you treat you while you're trying to handle this and deal with it. And I know from your story and your book, things didn't go very well after that. You started,
Yeah.
you know, things started getting more strained for you. So let's talk about that a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, so my father, he had a Jehovah's Witness funeral where it was mostly, about recruiting people during a period of grief, barely talked about, but his funeral was in a funeral parlor. He had a viewing. There was one day and then the next, um, which I never really questioned. I just knew it was weird because usually it was in a Kingdom Hall and there was no body. But I uh I remember that day, at the funeral home, they said you can have. They had a little kitchen area, and they were like, we have coffee and hot chocolate, and I just drank hot chocolate all day, and he, I don't know it. I locked into he'll be resurrected, and I locked into I hope he's resurrected tomorrow. And I didn't escape that for decades.
Wow. Yeah, they that call really did hijack your grieving process, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, I would argue that it totally negated it because one of the stages of grief is anger. How can you ever grieve when you're living in expectation of Armageddon and him, because what do they tell you? They tell you to see yourself in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And there was only one image I saw, and it was my father walking back to me. And that's what I wanted more than anything. And I don't remember when, but I know it was less than 4 months after his funeral that I was baptized. I don't remember when I said I wanted to get baptized. I know it was after he was dead. And despite what I said, I got baptized to ensure as much as I could that I could see my father again.
Right. So really your baptism wasn't because you wanted to serve Jehovah. It was because you wanted to see your father.
Oh, 100%. you know, admittedly, being a Jehovah's Witness was all I knew,
Right.
but I was 13. How smart is a 13-year-old?
Oh, and I get it, and I was 13 myself when I got baptized, but like, and that's just the whole thing though in your situation because your grieving process was taken away from you. You wanted this thing, and the only way you knew at that time how to get this thing, which was to see your father again, was to get baptized. And so that is another way that they tricked you into joining, fully joining their cult
Yeah.
as a kid.
Yes. And, you know, it was also around that time that for the first, well, it's the first time I remember. Who knows if I had this thought before, but I really considered that I was absolutely evil and I didn't deserve to be in the one true religion. And I figured, well, I was just born into it. I wasn't drawn because I'm not honest hearted because I always loved movies. I'm sure you've seen The Princess Bride.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great
Yeah.
movie.
But when I would pray to Jehovah, I remember thinking,
Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
I didn't give a fuck about Jehovah's sovereignty. It, it just, he's throwing a big galactic sissy fit because Satan got Eve to eat a fruit and my father had to die. I couldn't reconcile that. And so what my mind did was attribute the blame to me that I'm evil. And I was angry at Jehovah for not saving my father. And I couldn't grieve because, like I said, anger is a part of that. I was never allowed to be angry because Jehovah's Witnesses serve the happy God. Jehovah's Witnesses are happy people. You're not allowed to be sad or depressed.
Nope.
Not for any, not for a healthy period of time for a monumental event like that. So it tethered me to that state. And I didn't grieve my father for over 20 years.
And if you are sad and depressed, their answer is, well, go to more meetings and go out and service more.
Yeah. Go
Not-
pray. And
go
if
pray.
it doesn't work, it's your fault.
Yeah. So exactly. And they're giving you a placebo, but they're never actually giving you a treatment
Yeah.
for those things. And that's the big problem right there. They're trying to just because you see people, and I got friends who are never witnesses, and one of my friends was telling me how he lost his father as well, and he pours himself into his work and what he does. And he admits it. He knows that he's using that as a placeholder for his grief. But at least he has the chance to recognize that is a placeholder for his grief. Whereas when you're raised a Jehovah Witness, you don't even see that that's a placeholder for your grief. That's what you're told to do to get over your grief.
And what they do is they criminalize your grief.
Yes.
Why would you be sad when you can be rewarded? And if you would just focus,
Yeah.
you can achieve this because Armageddon is coming. It's always right around the corner. And
Yeah.
it's really an insidious thing. And I just struggled ever from that time forward. I was always mistreated. Anything I said was dismissed. And it was always my fault. I was always to blame for missing my dead father and for having depression. And it just created this massive rift. And other Jehovah's Witnesses began to distance themselves from me. And of course, you're already a pariah, but when you feel like a leper among the pariahs, that is a really intense, horrifying pain. And
So to complicate matters too, you're a teenage boy Okay. Teenage boys have all these new hormones going through them. Your testosterone levels are rising and puberty's hitting, and, you know, complicate it with the anger and guilt and shame and all these other mixes of emotions that you're getting because of the cult. And your brain is in overdrive and is just purely going into survival mode at this point just to get through.
Yeah. And I was angry. I was very, very angry. And I only had one friend who I could be angry with. I only had one friend who I could sit with and be quiet and not feel judged, and he would just be there. And he was a little younger than me, but he was a really good friend, and he would let me talk. What can you say? Especially, I think he was maybe 11 or 12, but I always cherished that because he was the only person that did that. It
Right.
made, besides like a fleeting, meaningless, "Hey, I'm here for you. Call me if you need me."
Right.
I could tell that to his best ability, he tried to comfort me. Now, unfortunately, one of the ways was us stealing his parents' alcohol. But
Well, I mean, alcohol is a tight pants Tony approved method of dealing with stuff.
you know, uh, and so my friend, I would spend the night with him, and like, I don't know why we decided to like start doing vandalism. I mean, you're a teenager, you're dumb, and there are pranks, and then there are ones that kind of cross the line. And we were crossing the line, but we were also too young to really know the difference. And just as a Jehovah's Witness, you have this um superiority complex instilled in you, and you really, I didn't recognize it, but I would knock on doors and people would be rude, and I would get back in the car and be like, well, you know they're going to regret it when Jehovah kills them. And adults would laugh at that and reinforce it. And
Hmm.
you dehumanize worldly people. They deserve death for, premarital sex and eating birthday cupcakes and 10 million other things. So they really don't, they're not people. At least I really didn't view them that way. And so it ended up, we got into some trouble, some legal trouble, which, I mean, I'm not discrediting, but as far as teenage boys go, it really wasn't that bad. It was just, we learned from it and moved on. But what was funny, and what I've only realized now, is that the world tried to help us. The world, taught us from our mistake, and Jehovah's Witnesses did not. They were just worried about PR, their image, just like they are now. They don't care about anyone being hurt
Hmm.
or what it does to their members. It's about the fat ass almighty dirty dollar.
Yep. And so, do you mind telling our audience what it is you did
Oh yeah.
exactly?
So we after book study, I created an alibi and I said, "Hey, we're gonna go to Baskin Robbins," and we went and hit mailboxes. Which, I mean, it's just idiotic.
And in the 90s, I think that was a classic move to do, anyways, because I can remember even where I grew up, kids would go out and go after mailboxes. I never understood it. I never did it, but like it was a thing that was done. And I even had one neighbor who had his mailbox hit so many times because he was just an ass to everybody. Okay. That he eventually made a mailbox, like he formed concrete, like from the
Yeah.
ground to cover the entire mailbox to put his mailbox in a concrete, structure for his mailbox so it wouldn't get
Yeah.
knocked over anymore.
Well, teenage boys are inherently stupid. I mean, I would be upset if my son did that when he was a teenager, granted, but you would think that somebody would be like, "Hey, this kid's dad died 3 years earlier. Maybe he's not okay.
Yeah.
Maybe he's really frustrated or just acting out. But no one did that. No Jehovah's Witness. Really, it was just, I met with two elders in the basement of our home after book study, and I was terrified. I mean, absolutely terrified. It was so frightening to me because I had we'd been arrested and put in a paddy wagon, taken to juvenile. Our parents came and got us. And I was afraid, because you're in the world and you're taught to fear it. But then when I'm sitting before them, and I did feel bad. I did realize, hey, I'm causing harm to other people that I don't wish harm on. Like, I didn't think beyond the moment, because I've always said hitting mailboxes is fun. It was a very fun thing to do. Was it stupid and wrong? Yeah, but it was fun. But the elders made it all about somehow me hitting mailboxes would make people reject Jehovah's plan, even though he draws honest-hearted ones. And they, it became about me being blood guilty, which was a terrifying proposition.
So not only are you a vandalist, but now by way of extension of that, they're saying you're going to be a murderer. That's what they're telling you. You're going to be a murderer because you hit mailboxes, and now those people might not convert to their cult.
And yeah, and not even a murderer, like they're talking about the police, the neighborhoods, the community. I'm sitting there at
You're
night.
a serial killer.
Yeah, I'm catastrophizing, and I'm like, how many people? Like, I remember thinking about like being before Jehovah, and he's just like telling me like, well, the cops who arrested, there was a time, but they remembered they arrested this little Jehovah's Witness shit. And I mean, I'm sure I was a blip in most of those people's lives. They probably tell the story laughing now. I don't know.
Probably.
But the way they approached me about it, I just hated myself. I remember when they made an announcement, back then they used to say, so-and-so, it has been privately reproved or has been publicly reproved. And that showed, I think that showed maybe repentance, but it was common knowledge. That's why, because if nobody knew, they could do a private reproof.
And even that's bullshit based off my own experience, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But
no, but so they say that my friend and I are publicly reproved, and this one sister just exploded crying. Like, I mean, you would have thought a bomb went off and half the hall was just dead and decimated. She just started, and I just remember looking like it made me feel like a fucking monster. Like, the whole scenario was so wrong and perverse, but I didn't realize until much later.
Because what's really shit though is when they make that announcement, they tell you that you need to be there because it shows humility.
And repentance, the right attitude, the right attitude about the decision.
It's like, and really all it is, it's those fuckers embarrassing you in front of the whole congregation when there was no need to do that shit.
Well, there is a need though. It's public shaming, which is a cult tactic.
Oh, I understand that,
Yeah.
but in reality, for healthy relationships, they should never be doing it. Of course, I'm not saying they're by no means a healthy relationship in this organization, but they should never have done that ever.
No, and that's so inappropriate for, especially for children or teenagers, for developing. A mistake is a mistake, and then if you keep doing it, it's a pattern. But I do think people, especially children, should be allowed to make a mistake and then learn from it and change. And I didn't vandalize or do things like that anymore. Because when I met with victims, it really humanized them. And I really did feel it was weird. I felt regret and sadness that I had, maybe taken people's sense of safety away, or, caused them to have to spend money. But then I'm sitting there and the elders, and I knew I felt bad. I knew that in my heart, but they're like, well, are you contrite? Do you have repentance? And I'm just like, well, how would I even begin to prove that? The only way I can prove it is by not doing it anymore. And I'm sitting across from you, and you're telling me I'm responsible for potentially killing half the community. It's psychotic.
And so let me ask you. You said you just said you met with the people whose mailboxes you knocked off. How did they treat you?
So, um, we had to go meet with them. I don't remember where. Our mothers took us, and I remember vividly that door opened, and there were people in a circle, and we had vandalized every single one of their property. And you want to talk about a room full of hate? It was palpable. I mean, it's like a punch in the face. I mean, I was 16. That was intense. And then what they had us do was we sat there, and everyone talked about that night and what was going on in their head, and the events of the night, and afterward. And there was this old couple there, I would say 70s, 80s. And um, they said they almost hadn't come because they were afraid that we would come back and hurt them. But their grandson had been involved in a gang and had been killed. And I just remember thinking how horrible that these old people are afraid of it. I never, ever would have hurt them. Yeah, I hit their mailbox, but I was dumb. I didn't even think about it. I didn't think beyond that.
Of course.
And that really had a profound effect. And I started crying. And my friends started crying. And afterwards, they hugged us and they said, "You're good boys. You just made a mistake." And, I dismissed it. Why would I not dismiss it? Because they're people who deserve death because they're worldly. I appreciated their forgiveness, but people shook our hands. You could feel it was like all the hatred was gone afterwards. It was like catharsis. And then, it was the diametric opposite of how Jehovah's Witnesses treated me.
And isn't that sad? The worldly people, the ones who you thought were going to die and be killed at Armageddon, these evil worldly people had more love and forgiveness for you than your own congregation that's supposed to be your support system and love you and take care of you.
Yeah. The people who were generous and kind were the ones that I prayed to my God to kill. And
Yeah.
then I just went back into the pointless, vain effort of fitting in the congregation, and I never did. Jehovah's Witnesses talk about their punishments, or their not punishments. What is it? Their discipline,
Yeah.
and how you can get past it. But for me, it just fucking defined me, and I never got out of it. I had it thrown back in my face. I really started receiving nastier treatment. I remember once, it was around this time, and I'm a teenager who carried his father's casket and put him in a hole and watched him get down or get lowered into the ground. And I had people my age telling me that I didn't deserve to be a Jehovah's Witness because I didn't remember my baptism date. At that point, I'm far more mature than you, because I'm sorry, I've buried a parent. Like that just in many ways, it adds years to you. But it was always about like I couldn't process that, but just everything I did was just wrong. I couldn't be confused, or I'd gone through trauma or loss, or I'm dealing with things that are so far beyond the comprehension of other children in the hall. It's that I'm not good enough because I'm not smiling. And sometimes all I could do was walk into that kingdom hall and not burst into tears.
Yeah, that's just terrible. You know, you're looking for some kind of solace. You're looking for some kind of encouragement, something,
Mhm.
and all you keep doing is getting beat down more and more. And I'm sure that with the anger that you started feeling, that didn't help that go away any. Rather, I made it probably was making it worse and worse, wasn't it?
Yeah. And, anything that, pardon me, anything that made me feel better was always wrong.
Yeah.
I remember my friend who I hit mailboxes with too. He introduced me to punk rock. He introduced me to heavy metal. And I just fell in love with heavy metal. Metallica. I remember the first song I heard by them was Fuel off Reload. And just it
Really? Fuel?
that was
Fuel?
yeah, I
Oh,
know. But
man.
that's a good song. But
It's okay.
no, but that opened the door, and then Master of Puppets and the Black Album and Ride the Lightning and Kill 'Em All. And then I started getting into like some new metal, that was coming out. And I really felt empowered, and a lot of the lyrics I felt understood. I felt like they were expressing my emotions. But invariably, Jehovah's Witnesses would find out about it and tell me I wasn't a good person, or I get called into a back room and or told, well, I listen to that stuff, but I don't wear a t-shirt with Ozzy Osbourne because I don't want to offend my brother. And I never really gave a fuck about offending my brother. I like it's idiotic because they cherry pick who can be I could never be offended. If I was offended, I was a piece of shit. But anytime I offended anybody with anything when they should have minded their own business, let's tell this kid how terrible he is.
Well, let me just tell you, it doesn't matter what you do. You're a piece of shit either way.
Yeah, the
And
house
that,
always wins.
I mean, we laugh about it, but it's true though, because
Oh,
if
yeah.
you offend somebody, you're a piece of shit. If you're the offended one, you're a piece of shit. It's just like, come on,
Yeah.
where's the compromise here? Where's the fucking rationality at
Yeah.
all? There is
Well,
none really, but
every Kingdom Hall has their own hierarchy, and a lot of times those elders will protect their children or whatever, but it's all Jehovah's Witnesses are equal, but some are more equal than others. And yeah, it was just mind-blowing to me. I don't even know. I didn't address it in my book, and because I don't know, but I swear I must have been privately reproved 10 to 15 times. It was nonstop. If not that, it was just I was being called in to be counseled. One time I was counseled for wearing I had a $500 black suit, and I wore a black shirt and a black tie. And let's have a committee meeting. And and that was the first time I got shitty with the elders, because I remember they were like, "Why are you wearing all black?" And I was very overweight when I was 18. I had lost some weight at that time, but black is slimming, they say. I was like, well, because I like black.
because I'm the devil.
And they kept talking about it, and I was like, well, yeah, it must be. I was like, oh, is that why there aren't any black people in this hall? And they really
What
didn't.
the fuck?
Well, no, that's what I said, and
Oh,
they really
okay.
got offended. And I'm like, well, I mean, obviously you have an issue with the color. I'm like, there's nothing scriptural that says wearing all black is bad. So, and they couldn't really refute it. They told me, that's not what was going on. But that was the first time I kind of gave the elders a little back, because it's like, well, if you're going to apply this to me, why can't I apply it to you? Because it's bullshit. But
And elders don't like it when you push it right back on them, because I've done the same thing with elders before when they tried telling me stuff and I
yeah,
push it right back on them, and they actually shut up and never said anything to me again about the issue. So
well, yeah, because they deserve double honor.
yeah, right.
They don't even deserve
They don't even
normal.
deserve single honors in a
Yeah,
lot of
single
cases.
honor. Yeah, it just went on like that for what felt like forever, really for 20 years. It was just perpetual deja vu. Meetings, preparation, depression. Well, and that was another thing too. I had depression, and my mother, I believe I was 15 the first time I went to a therapist, and he suggested that I leave Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, how could I do that? How could I give up this opportunity to see my father again and reject the one true God?
And that right there, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that right there is why Jehovah's Witnesses don't want you to go to therapy, because your
Mhm.
therapist will see through their bullshit.
I went to numerous therapists because they would always suggest I leave Jehovah's Witnesses, and then I would stop going. And I just thought, oh, well, this is Satan's world, and he's just trying to get his hooks into me. And those people really were probably potentially setting themselves up. I mean, therapists probably shouldn't really suggest leave your religion, but they were trying to help me, but I just couldn't see it. And I kept going back to the same empty well where people didn't want me, didn't understand me, and mistreated me. But I kept thinking, like, maybe I can fix it from within. And I think a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses have that mentality. Like, well, this is not perfect, but it's the most perfect organization on the planet.
And that
And
right there is the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
yeah, and I was put on antidepressants. So this was in the late 90s, which they didn't really know that a lot of times a side effect of a medication for depression is it makes you want to kill yourself. So I started having, not like I wasn't hearing voices, but I just had the notion, like, hurt yourself, kill yourself. And I would tell people, and they would say, well, pray, or they would just really start, they would kind of back away and then not talk to me anymore. So I thought that I really began to think that I deserved to die. And the way I kind of thought about it was, well, if I die and Jehovah doesn't save me or resurrect me, I'll just be asleep, or I'll be resurrected and see my dad again. And either of those are better than what I feel. So I began, um, some self-destructive behavior. I tried to kill myself numerous times. These weren't instances where of course, social media really wasn't around, but I wasn't telling people. I was just taking massive amounts of pills or drinking or trying to hang myself or cutting myself or burning myself or hitting myself in the head until I black out, because my reality was so fucking horrific. I would rather feel pain than the sadness. And then I even had periods where I was so numb. I really wondered, am I real? Do I exist? I
Right.
remember one time I held a flame to my arm because I wasn't sure whether or not I could feel it. And I don't know. I've always talked openly about these things. They're not pleasant things, but I know that there's no way I'm the only ex-Jehovah's Witness who went through hell like that.
Oh no,
And
you're absolutely not. But
yeah,
just what the horrible part of this whole thing is, though, is that you're showing behaviors of how much help you need.
yeah,
And because the elders have zero training in any of these things, they have no idea how to recognize it and therefore punish you rather than trying to find you help. And it's really a backward system, and it keeps people in these endless cycles of self-harm and keeps them in their depression, and also keeps them in the cult as well, because like you said, you're thinking it's all you and it's your fault, and you need to just change and do something different, when it's them that needs to change and do something different, not you.
Yeah. Well, you look at, okay, I'm on a medication where a side effect is suicidal ideation. And, I don't deserve to be essentially soft shunned by my congregation, mocked, belittled, denied almost no one would even talk to me about it. And I didn't go out and make friends in the world because it was forbidden. I kept trying to fit in with people who just didn't care. And maybe I thought I could make them care. Maybe I thought if I was good enough, Jehovah would make them care. I truly don't know. It I just lived through it. I mean, and uh yeah, it it was just it was a very, very dark time. I mean,
Yeah.
20 years of misery, so much that I almost can't even tell you what happened at that time.
A siren cutting the air, born anew an unseen atmosphere. Hellfire curls around the billowing form of a seraph. Wait, and I am just about sick. Asinine rationalizations, stiff with conceit, claiming doubt, strength, and independence. The diametric opposite of your bullshit persona. I don't want you for an echo. No segue. These lies and flighty theories are mutually exclusive. No love like first love. I've forgotten that passion. Everyone does. If every pain, sorrow, mistake, and punishment was so I might save you, it was worthwhile. You just sit there like a cold, sociopath bastard. Don't say what I want to hear, sycophant. The mystery you think you are, I was. This is a betrayal, an indulgence of self. You lie. My love is unconditional. My friendship isn't. Wait, I'm sick. This wears on me as you sit there arrogant. Pride goes before a fall. So throw it all away. I will not bear witness. You don't get to apologize for ruining my day. Not to me, to your family, or yourself. Be a man. Own what you do, my dear brother, my child. I am sick. I am just about sick of you. Smudging black and white. No juxtapositions, only complication. Generalities, and you lied. You are Cain, and I am Abel.
Um,
And so, like, because of all this, like, you never you never reached out in the congregation, obviously, because to become like a ministerial servant or do anything like that, because you had no ambition to, because of how you were being treated.
well, yes, and also I always remembered when I was or that meeting before I was publicly reproved, and the way the elders treated me. And I knew inside that I had messed up. I don't remember those elderly people's names or faces, but I remember what it felt like when they hugged me.
Yeah.
It was like absolution. You know, they could have said, "Yeah, this piece of shit," but they looked for the good in me, and no one else did that.
Yeah.
And I really felt bad. And the elders told me I didn't feel bad enough and punished me. And I fucking hated them for that. How dare you presume to know what I feel? And I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to be an elder or a ministerial servant because I felt like it was far more likely you would cause harm in someone's life.
Yeah. And that's what they were doing. They were causing harm in your life, And then, so what did that, how did those events, unfold? Because I know you, in your book, you talk about your alcoholism and everything like that. So how did those events lead you into that?
So yeah, I got drunk with my friend a few times, and then I drank a few times before I turned 21. And I would say I was really a casual drinker for a long time. And I when I was 23, I was in a car wreck, and I had a lot of scar tissue in my coccyx, in between the vertebrae. I would go to physical therapy, and they would like dig these paddles in between. It was really unpleasant, and I had chronic pain for a long time too. And of course, at that time, they prescribed me a ton of Vicodin and muscle relaxers. And I really didn't drink much during that time. I did some, but and then they kind of tightened regulations, and some doctors, they I forget exactly what happened. I think just too much time. They were like, "You need to get off these meds." Well, I still had pain, and what coping mechanisms did I have? None. I could pray, but that never worked, and I could go to meetings or be more spiritual, but that never worked. So, uh, yeah, I began drinking, and then when I was 33, there were a couple of events. Two brothers in my old hall, two congregations met there. Well, in the other congregation, um, two brothers killed themselves within like 2 or 3 months.
Oh wow.
They both shot themselves in the head. One of them, he worked with witnesses, and he said, "Hey guys, I'm going for lunch," and then he went in his truck, and they heard him shoot himself. And then the other guy, he had a little girl, and I remember some witnesses talking about, she was like 5, and she asked, "Will my daddy be in paradise?" And I just thought, how fucking awful, because I've had that thought at least once a day for forever. I can't remember a time that seems real when I didn't think that. And also, someone who I had dated had a severe drinking problem, and just nobody cared. I just noticed, nobody really acknowledged it. Nobody talked about it. Nobody said, "Hey, people are hurting themselves, suffering, killing themselves." Um, at least one of the guys, I knew he was drinking a lot after his mom had died, and it was a reflection of me. And it's like, man, people just, I knew something was wrong, but I still really, I thought it was me. And I reached out to an elder. I mean, and it's insanity. The same thing with expecting a different result. And he just mocked me, belittled me when I told him a plan I had to kill myself. Because after 20 years, I was broken. I couldn't do it anymore. And I thought, maybe if you hear in all these scriptures that so and so went, and they were pleading and they supplicated Jehovah, and he helped them. And I thought, maybe if I am just completely vulnerable, maybe just once. And his reaction truly befuddled me. It was almost inconceivable. And I told my mom, and it was just, wait on Jehovah. He's an elder. And that, I remember thinking, I'm going to be drunk as much as I can for the rest of my life until I die. I thought of Leaving Las Vegas, where Nicolas Cage's character pickles his liver. I mean, as insane as that is, it sounded like a good idea at the time.
Well, I mean, like you said earlier, there's only so many vices you could use to numb yourself.
Yeah.
And, that was the only one you could really use. I mean, in, witness terms, of course,
Yeah.
minus going to hard drugs or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
I can absolutely see why you felt that way, and why you felt that those bottles were your means of escape.
Yeah. And, I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses have no life. I don't know how I got away with. There were times I would go to meetings drunk. I don't. I mean, I floss and brush my teeth and gargle at least twice a day. I'm usually 2 showers. I'm a clean guy. I really don't know how people didn't smell booze on me, because I was like, I can't sit in these fucking meetings anymore. But I couldn't leave. I was like, I have to be. I can't do it. I remember one time, it was because I was disfellowshipped when I was 23 for about 18 months, and I went to convention. And I always hated convention because for me, I would go to the Kingdom Hall and nobody cared if I existed. And then assemblies hurt even more because it was more people that didn't give a shit. And convention was out of state. No one cared. I would just walk laps. And I was disfellowshipped that year. And I noticed that there really was no difference. I mean, I might see a few people, like maybe some friends' parents, but for the most part, nobody talked to me. Nobody ate with me. Nobody invited me. And I wore contacts at the time. And my vision, I've had LASIK, or I had it, I think later that year, but I was pretty blind. And I took my contacts out so I couldn't see all of them because it hurt so bad to
Oh,
be
wow.
disfellowshipped and see no fucking difference between it.
Wow. Wow. That's heavy, man. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's so true because like, they're supposed to be God's, loving organization and all that, and just the love that they don't show. And I'm gonna talk about real quick. Just I have a friend who he's still actually a JW. He's just fellowshipped right now, but he talks to me, and he admitted to me yesterday that he even sees how the elders have no love. Now
No.
he still believes the religion and all that, and that's a whole
Yeah.
nother issue. But you know, for him to say that, I thought, yes, I know you're just beating yourself up trying to, be back in the religion, but for him to recognize that the elders have no love, I think is a huge step.
Oh, yeah.
And and just like what you were saying right there, you took your contacts out and you saw no difference, and that's saying a lot right there.
Yeah.
You know, they look the same whether you can see them or not.
Yeah. It just, do you know what's really crazy is I think it was last week I just had a really really terrible mental health day, and I've always worn my emotions on my face, and almost everybody I worked with, and it wasn't that I was doing it for attention. I could barely get showered and go to work. Almost everyone asked me how I was and like talked to me and
Mhm.
sat and made eye contact and took time, and that really resonated with me because I spent years like that, even telling people, and no one cared. It there there were other people in our congregation too who had depression or had struggles, and I would see the congregation mock them, belittle them, mistreat them. They it's like you just see somebody dumping gasoline on themselves and then they pull out a Zippo and they're flicking it to get it to start. Nobody cares. Nobody acts. Nobody responds. They just turn away. They just don't care.
Yeah, they might as well be standing there with the lighter to light you up themselves.
Yeah. A flamethrower. I mean,
Yeah.
they know people are struggling and they mistreat them for it and they blame them for it. And
Mhm.
it- it's just perverse, and then it was weird around that time, not long after I decided to drink myself to death. I witnessed to a woman that I worked with, and I was attracted to her. I liked her, and she started coming to meetings, and she started studying. And I also told her, I said, numerous times, don't do this just for me because this is what I believe. I don't want, it to, be unevenly yoked or all that. And when the people who were the woman who was studying with her and when the congregation Well, when any of them learned that I brought her to meetings, they all acted surprised. She told me about that. Like, really, him? But then they really started turning her against me. The people who never talked to me and treated me like trash started inviting her and her son over. And then it was I was told that people were offended that we were spending time together, which it's crazy. If I'm suicidal, if I'm not coming to meetings, if I tell people I'm struggling, nobody gives a shit. I do something that's good by their definition of good, and I have a friend, and you have to ruin it. And
Yeah.
that's
And the really shitty part about that is, let's say it was another guy, right?
mhm,
And they would have been no problem. But because it was a woman, then it's a problem. But yet you're the one who got her to start coming to meetings,
yeah,
and her and her son. And so you're the one that, in essence, saving her,
mhm,
doing
yeah,
the right thing. And now you're still a piece of shit because, oh, you're seeing a woman and you're, you know, what we,
yeah,
like you said, you're the pariah of the congregation.
yeah. And uh, it was really painful. We were because it was this. It's weird to say discouraging now that I have no belief or faith, but I felt like they were driving them out, and I felt like it was really unfair, and I felt like, I care for these people. Why is it that everybody I care for has to suffer because of me? Like, it was hard to view it any other way than like the fault was mine. And then we were called to a meeting and told that we couldn't spend time together except at the meetings. And that really blew my mind because I didn't I wasn't aware of any scriptural reason. They're like, well, you're dating. I'm 33. I think she was 27 at the time.
Hmm.
We're adults. And it just pissed me off because at that point, I didn't set out that way, but I had fallen in love with her. And, she was my friend. And I just refused to do that. I tried to talk to my mom about it, and of course it was always, we have to be loyal, we have to be loyal. And then it was interesting, for the first time in my mom's life, she told me I have to be loyal. And it was like, it was almost as if she said, when she said the words, I just could feel a hand pushing me away,
Yeah.
like, no, you can fucking die and destroy yourself, but I just wanted my mom to support me and to actually care about me, and she doesn't. She only cares about Jehovah's Witnesses and whatever they allow her to do and think and believe. And so, I lived with my mom. I had debt. I gave my mother most of my money. And why would I save things? Because Armageddon is, you don't save money. I never did because Armageddon's imminent. And, I wanted that has Batman on it. That's cool. I wanted it. Like, I wasn't ever taught to manage money. Yeah, Jehovah will provide, and so my mom says you have to be out by the weekend, and it was like Thursday. Now I had no Jehovah's Witness friends, no worldly friends because that was forbidden. The only person I had was this woman, and my mom knew that. And then I begged. I'm like, well, I don't even get paid till the following weekend. Let me, find a place. No, you have to be out. And it's like, I only have one place to go. And she knew that. And she just turned her back on me and left. And I went and I lost my virginity that night.
Now, can I let me ask you this? Because of how the elder or the congregation was trying to turn her on you, did she in any way start to treat you differently because of that?
No, for the first time in my life, someone had my back.
That's good. That's good. I mean that they didn't turn her against you like that. That's
Yeah. I think
fantastic.
she, she commented, she said, like, this is, I thought it was this, but this is weird. And she even told me, she said they treat people who have been disfellowshipped differently, even if they've been reinstated. And that was all I knew. I do feel like that's true more often than not, unless you become an elder and are exemplary. But um, yeah, so I moved in there and I was disfellowshipped for the second time in my life.
Yeah, you moved in, you lost your virginity that night because at that point you were like, for lack of a better term, fuck it, you know.
Well,
Uh, I mean,
and
like,
uh,
what are you gonna do though? I mean,
yeah,
you don't want to go live on the streets.
which that's funny because that's what the elders told me I should do.
I remember, but that's why I said that.
Yeah.
But why would I mean, like, if I had a choice between living on the streets and living with a woman that I'm falling in love with, whether it's going to be sinful or not, I'm choosing the woman every time.
Yeah. Well, and I remember, um, I was, summoned to an elder meeting, and I told them, I said, I had sex with her, and they're like, more than once, and I was like, yeah. I waited 33 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what have you done to correct the wrong? And I'm like, well, I can't take it. Like, what do you mean? And they wanted me to move out of there and go to a homeless shelter or call the police. And I remember this contemptible piece of shit who always had tie tacks that matched his cufflinks. He said, they have places for people like you. He goes, you don't have anywhere to go. You call them and you tell them you're destitute. And I could just feel the contempt coming out of his mouth across the table at me. And, it was like, who are you? Who who talks to people that way? It was staggering. And so I did not go for that disfellowshipping because I did not respect their decision. And I told them I would marry her as soon as I could. That's how I was going to right the wrong. And I spent, I believe, 25 months. Now, the first time I was disfellowshipped, I lived with my mother. So she still spoke to me, but not about spiritual things. But sometimes we did, but we didn't, you know. And, and that was real shunning. That was absolutely, cut off from everything I knew. And when I got married to my ex-wife, we eloped. Uh, Now I had well, she didn't want to tell her family we were married. Probably because she was involved with the doomsday call. But I didn't understand that, and it broke my heart. And that was when I mean, I made the choice. I'm not blaming anyone. That was when my drinking became problematic. That was up until that point. I mean, yeah, I drank a lot, but I was a functional drunk. I went to work. I just had nothing to do. I went to work and I was in a religion where people hated me and I had no friends. So I watched Netflix and drank. I mean,
Right.
not that that's much of a life, but I really don't think it's that problematic. But that was when I could no longer stand to just I couldn't deal with that. You're told you can't pray to Jehovah because you're cut off from him. You're cut off from your family. You're cut off from any friends. And I began angry drinking. I mean, I was going through 24 beer a night. And then I went to vodka, and I would kind of I would hit a new plateau where my tolerance was higher and higher, and I just kept going and going. Now, I was still going to meetings often. As soon as I got back from meeting, I would drink till I passed out. Um, I don't know what I was doing. I think meandering. I don't know. It just I was always drunk every day, and I was reinstated. That didn't. There was nothing healing about that. Um, I even remember my mother telling me at one time that she was really struggling with shunning me, and I don't know. It was weird. It was like I could see in her mind and see like the gears working, and then her mind just said nope, and back to be obedient. But when my ex-wife became pregnant, I really wanted my child to have like a multi-generational family. I never had that. I never knew my grandparents. I vaguely knew my mother's stepmom for like the last 2 years of her life, but she had dementia, and we took care of her, but that was it. But I cherished that time. But I really wanted my child to have their grandparents, and I think that was part of why I kept going back, and also it was all I knew. And my ex-wife's my mother-in-law was not I mean, she's not a kind person, and she caused all kinds of problems in our marriage. We were married a year before they found out we were married, and you know, I never forgave her. Really, I don't think it's forgivable. I understand, I guess, but at the same time, if you were going to hide that we were married, you shouldn't have married me. And the man I am now, I would have divorced you that day, but I couldn't divorce her because it's not
Okay.
allowed, and so it was just living together, roommates almost, like I don't know, it just really destroyed the love. I truly loved her. There's a term, and it's in my book. It's called koi no yokan. Perhaps I butchered it, but it's Korean and it doesn't translate to English, but it means when you see someone, premonition of love, you know that love will occur. And that is what I felt when I saw her. The first time I saw her, her image is just burned into my memory. I can even see the door behind her. And that just broke me. I really, my mother had rejected me, my religion had rejected me, my God had rejected me, and I felt like my wife had rejected me. And so, my son was born, and I was reinstated, but nobody really cared. One guy that I had been friends with, he came over and we talked, and I don't know, it was weird. 2.5 years, I still went to meetings, I was still current, and
Were you?
admittedly, I was drunk all the time, but that was
Yeah, I was
just
about to ask that. Were you still drunk all the time at this point? So yeah.
yeah. So from that point on, I never stopped drinking. I was always drunk. I really got into bourbon. I mean, I like nice things, and I like drinking nice things. I really liked to drink scotch when it was bitterly cold, and I don't know. I don't want to say that alcohol became part of my personality, but I was just always drinking. But I was never really around people. I mean, I I cared for my ex-wife. I loved my stepson and I loved my son, but it was just everything was so painful. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I want to be drunk. I don't remember anybody telling me they had a problem with it, but I was drunk. I'm not saying they didn't. I just don't remember, there were no interventions. And I remember when my son was very little once, he pointed at my bourbon and he called it dad juice.
Oh, jeez.
And that hurts, you know. But
Well, I was about to ask you to, because to me, because I've read your book and I've read your whole story, and I was going to get to the part that I think is the probably one of the worst parts I feel, and I know how you feel about it
yeah.
right now, but if you don't mind, let's talk about real quick. One night you got really blackout drunk.
An awful fulcrum tipped, spilled into dissociative hell. A displaced persona, sometimes being misplaced, is a generosity. The black hole of realization, a gravitational pull outside of who I was, haunted by a reflection on a meditation. It was and is organic theft, inevitable victimization, and a countdown on a timeline. The mere absence of misery feels like a vice. I cannot make the egregious claim I love more than I hate. Spit in his face and you plead, sweating blood, lost in the need. The predatory prey while the penitent pray. Spill what remains, emotions numbing, lesions rubbing, legions coming. I'm becoming. Get the fuck out of my way.
Yeah.
And
So yeah. So COVID had happened, and COVID was the event I had been living in expectation of all my life. I thought it was Armageddon. Also, Donald Trump was president. I mean,
the
all the
world
pieces
the world was going to hell.
all the pieces seemed to be there, and I also knew that my wife didn't want to be a witness anymore. And my stepson had, issues with, I think depression. He was young, and I saw a lot of myself in him. I saw a child suffering. His relationship with his father was, it ebbed and flowed, and I would always see the result of it when it would ebb. And I really loved him, and I wanted to help him, but I knew I didn't feel like I could. I tried. There were countless nights I would be up all night or for hours, 4 and 5 in the morning, talking to him, trying to help him. And I don't know, it just, my drinking, I was drinking like a fifth a night, sometimes more than that. And I had quit my job to stay home and care for the kids. And I cooked dinner for my family. And my stepson smarted off to me about he hadn't done a chore, and he was 10. That's what kids do. But it was, I grabbed him by the t-shirt, and then I blacked out, and I woke up in a jail cell. And then I had to find out what had happened. I hadn't let go of him, and I remember he was. It took months before flashes came back, and also in that mental state, I don't really know if what I remember is accurate, and I also don't really want to dwell on it because it's painful. I didn't hit him, but he tried to run. I think he jumped over the couch, and I went over and fell on top of him. And I was angry at him, for some kid stuff. But alcohol removes your your inhibitions, and you don't know. Quite often you don't realize you're going to an extreme when you're not. And the way my drinking had been for years, it just, thankfully, I did not do any massive physical harm. But they told me what I had been charged with, and I had to ask, who did I do that to? And there were only 3 options, and there was no intent. If my little boy, who was 2 at the time, he could have done something, and I know that I could have just as easily have done that to him, which is horrifying to me. I never thought that that was a possibility. I truly didn't. I did not think that is something that I could ever do. And so I spent 77 days in jail. And it was funny. Well, not funny, but it was interesting to me. My brain kind of began to clear up from, being drunk all the time. And I really had been estranged from Jehovah's Witnesses. But before that had happened too, I had confronted the elder who had mocked me for being suicidal. And he had denied that it happened. And we had spoke on the phone, and we spoke on the phone the second time too. And he said that another brother, actually the one who told me I should be homeless, was there when we spoke, which is a lie and a cover up. And I had kind of been looking at apostate stuff. I would usually drink before a while I did it because I felt, like it was so wrong. But, I had read about like these child or CSA cases and cover-ups, and it kind of, that stuff rang true. Like, wow, if they would cover up this, then what wouldn't they cover up? But then when I was in jail, you return to familiar patterns, and all I knew was prayer. So I began fervently praying, for hours, because all I had was time. And I'm praying and praying, and then I stumbled across a Bible, which I took as, divine intervention. And I wrote my mother 2 letters, and I was served a no contact order. And what I think is really absurd is I apologized. I said, hey, I have a drinking problem. Please help me. And please have the elders reach out to me and send me literature. None of them did. None of them cared. And my mother testified in court. She thought whenever I got out of jail or prison that I would hurt my stepson and my son. Now, I can own that I fucked up in a blackout, but how dare you say that I would, in a sober state, hurt a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old?
Yeah.
That is absolute character assassination. And because my stepson was 10 at the time, I was put in protective custody. And I think almost everyone in there was a pedophile or child porn or rape. All of them, their mothers talked to them, but not my mother, not the Jehovah's Witness who practices love never fails. And up until that point, I had been reading a chapter of the Bible every day. I think it was a King James Bible, but I I stopped. I stopped. Um, with Jehovah, with Jehovah's Witnesses, with God, with faith. I said no, and that night I wrote a poem. It's in Mentally Diseased, but I talk about my faith and how it was a waste and how it's gone. And it was a very difficult period because when you're incarcerated, you're never safe. You think of whatever moment in your life you have been like at the most fear, the least safe. You crank it up to that, and then it never goes away because you're in there with the worst people imaginable. And admittedly, a lot of people use jail to create whatever persona or pretend to be something, you know. But for me, what did I know about self-reliance? Nothing. It
And
was I'm
I
sorry.
was, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was going to ask you, in jail, did you have to bunk with other people as well, or did you get your own bed and
So
own private cell basically?
so I was in an open block. It was known as the Chomo block. And when you would go in, there was glass. You would go in the door. There were two steel tables. It was cold as shit. It sucked sitting on those. Then there were the showers, and then there were just bunks, double bunks. And then they also had these things they called boats that were on the floor because census was high. And they would put a mattress in there. And, I realized that in jail, people would kind of push me to see if I was easily intimidated or yeah, it was just very weird. Of course, I was trained to be hyper observant, being a Jehovah's Witness because oh, you have dogs, so I'll talk about, frolicking with pandas and lions. That's how my mother raised me, to really pay attention to people and how I could grab any little thing. But I wasn't harmed in jail. I wasn't going to be anyone's bitch. I mean, essentially, it was like, if you're going to hurt me, you're going to have to beat the shit out of me first. And, but it was weird, like making little decisions, but based on what felt right. And you're in survival mode, but there was no deity, there was no God, there was no support system, there was nothing. It was me. And I I just realized, wow, like how well I still had my ex-wife and at the time though, but I wasn't allowed to contact my stepson, which hurt, but I understood. Um and I got a public defender. The legal system is a joke. You when I tried to get into a treatment facility, I was told I had been sober too long, and no one cared. And I could have either went to trial or signed a plea bargain. And of course, I had really no references. I mean, your phone call in jail, yeah, good luck. I mean, in jail, they do whatever they want. If they don't like you, and a lot of places don't even accept the phone calls, and you don't have a phone book or the internet. You only have help from outside, and I really didn't have any. Um, I mean, my ex-wife did send me some money to get some extra food because I'm hypoglycemic, and I wrote her and my little boy letters and pictures, and I tried to stay busy. Um, but it just came to either go to trial or sign this and see my family again, and that was all I wanted. And I really thought, well, even if I can't see my stepson, it if I have to be homeless, where can I live around our apartment so I can still see my little boy? I mean, I legitimately thought, like, what creeks can I bathe in? Where can I make a little hut? But I
Yeah.
had my car. I was like, well, I can live in my car. So I signed the plea bargain and I got out of jail. I had been in there 77 days. It might as well have been 77 years. I lost 14 pounds while I was in there. And I'm not really an outdoorsy person. I always had allergies, but being released after that time, it was it was very overwhelming. But I discovered my car had been repossessed while I was in there,
Mm.
and I couldn't live with my family, and and everyone I knew, even though I thought I had some worldly friends, they all said, "Sorry, be homeless." that that was I don't know the word for that. I spent 3 days. I did sleep inside 2 of those nights. One of the nights I slept in my ex-wife's car. But when you crawl under a bridge to try and figure out where you can live, and then you see how dirty it is and all the bugs, and you sit there and think, well, where can I sleep and be bitten the least? That was a moment of terror so profound that it really made me question if I had ever even experienced fear. It just I was like, I'm on this globe completely fucking alone. I have no God looking out for me. I have no parents. I have no family that can help. I mean, my little boy couldn't, and no one else really did, and I have no friends. That was and that's hard to reconcile, that nobody gives a fuck if you just die.
And I can see, I've never been homeless myself, so I can't say I understand what that's like to go through. And I'm not going to try to presume what it was like for you. But like I have seen like where I work, okay, and where I park to walk into work, we always have homeless people sleeping on the sidewalks around the buildings in front of where I work. And I see how they live. And I've tried to imagine like what I would do if I was in that situation. And like for you, I know you stayed in where you wanted to, where you were at because of your family. And that's probably like what I would do too if I came to that situation, if it was just me, you
Mhm.
know. Um if But I mean, like, I really can't say what I would do because I don't know. I've never done it, but I have seen how other people do it are doing it, but they probably have been homeless for a long time. So they've acquired at least some things like their sleeping bags and
Mhm.
whatever they have to that they can carry with them and just go that, being fresh on the street like you were out of jail, you probably had nothing at all of those things, didn't you?
Well, no, and I didn't have a car. I'm on probation.
Yeah.
Now I'm a violent felon, so essentially nowhere will rent to me. Most jobs I can't get, and I have no support system. This is how people get discarded and thrown away, and they never get out of it. And I you know, I hoped that when I had signed the plea bargain, and I was under the misapprehension that when I signed it, the no contact order with my stepson would be lifted, because I very much wanted to apologize to him. I wanted to tell him I loved him, and there was no intent, that I was a drunk. I drank a lot and I didn't see it coming, and I would have stopped it if I did. But nobody cared. My mother painted me as a monster. No, but it's fine. What happened happened, and I I I began calling because what do I know about this world? I've been no part of it. And so I began calling places to live, and I found a place, a halfway house that said they would interview me. And it was either I found out after the fact there were some other places, but I went down and I was accepted into their program, and and I was afforded a bit of free time. And when I was admitted, I had to surrender my phone, my wallet, or I kept my wallet, but like my debit card, any cash I had. I didn't have car keys. And um, after a certain amount of time, I was allowed to have my phone back. And you were kept pretty busy doing, going to constant AA meetings. And it was bizarre because I began to notice similarities between Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and Jehovah's Witnesses. And I mean, there were more tattoos, longer hair, fewer teeth, far more profanity, but something about it was really familiar, and I really didn't understand what. And I had looked at apostate material. I had seen, like, what is it? The Declaration of Facts. I couldn't reconcile that. The CSA cases were horrifying. And I would get on the XJW Reddit and read stories, and I'm like, oh my God, that could be picked right out of my life. I knew there was something wrong, but it just making that switch over was really difficult. But when I got my phone back, I began researching, and that was when I started first using the word cult in reference to Jehovah's Witnesses. Not all the time, but actually someone else said it to me first. And I think hearing it from an actual person, and we got along. He cared about me, and he was trying to help me. But actually hearing him tell me you were in a cult really resonated in me, and I was like, man. And he was
Is that
actually, oh, sorry.
is that what led you to research what cults actually were? Or were you already
Well,
starting to research it before he said it to you?
Well, like I said, you were kept so busy, you weren't allowed much free time, and you were told not to isolate yourself, and you needed to always be around other addicts, alcoholics, whatever. But he said that to me, and the next day, I was really excited because I was going to see my wife and my little boy. And for the first time in my life, I thought I can leave this religion, and I envisioned a life with my family free of Jehovah's Witnesses. And the next day, she told me she had filed for divorce.
Oh, jeez.
And it I just kept losing things. The only thing I had was my little boy. And for me, my thought process was, well, his mother threw me away. My mother doesn't give a shit about me. I certainly knew my ex-wife's family didn't like me before I went to jail. So I'm thinking all I'm going to have, or all my son is going to be around people is who think I'm a complete sack of shit. And I wanted to die. I was absolutely devastated. And I was just like, man, like I have nobody now. Well, I mean, I had my son, but he was 2, and and I was estranged from him, and it was really hard because then it's like I don't want to see the woman who's divorcing me, but I have to see her to see my son. And what am I going to do? Just sit there and cry in front? It was hard to deal with. And of course, what was I told in Alcoholics Anonymous? Let it go, give it to God. Nothing happens in AA by accident. All of these thought terminating cliches, and just I had volunteered to cook for a house of where there were like 20 some guys, one of my best recipes, and my wife filed for divorce or told me about it on Saturday, and I was supposed to cook that Sunday night, and I said, please don't make me cook for them. Please just let me sleep. And I was told, no, you need to get out of yourself and do service for others. And I had to.
Sounds like a typical Jehovah Witness answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, just a complete vile asshole.
Yeah.
Heartless, bereft of emotion. And I mean, it really is a shame I didn't do anything to the food. I should have thrown it in the trash and served it to them and just smiled as they ate it. But shit like that, I was like, man, why? And it was hard because what I knew was Jehovah's Witnesses, jail, and these people. It was like, is everyone just a bag of shit? Like, are there any? I was just like, fuck, dude. And so I really began to get angry anytime I heard the word God or faith or religion. I had lost my faith in it, but I recognized in myself that even if God was real, I would be like, fuck you. This is the bet. This is what you do to your children. This suffering, this hell that people, I realized that I had contempt for any higher power, and I had no respect. And I was told that I had to surrender and give it to God. And I don't know if you're familiar with the quote by Zapata, but he said, "It is better to die on your feet than live on your knees."
Yeah, I've heard that quote. I didn't know who it was from, but yeah, I've heard that quote. Yeah.
And I began to challenge and confront things I didn't like. And I refused to be told things about myself that I knew were not true. And people really didn't like that. And there was a lot of, but some people did, but a lot of people were like, they, kind of criminalized and shit just, well, I'm like, there is no God. And if there is a God, I don't think he deserves respect. And so I was thrown out of that halfway house. I was there about 4 months. I didn't relapse. People did heroin and meth in the building and were allowed to stay. People stole and were allowed to stay, but I didn't believe in God, so I had to go.
Isn't that some bullshit right there?
Yeah. And
I mean, geez.
Yeah. And it was like I put it in my book. We had a house meeting where they said it wasn't okay to have sex by the dumpster. And I just started, I'm like, well, yeah, that's on a long list of shit I would never want to do. And then they're like, oh, well, you're trying to differentiate. You think you're better? And I'm like, well, evidently, but I mean, no, just like, I don't need to be told this shit. Like, I said I wouldn't drink, and I meant it. It's just, that's it. For me, it's the same thing when I was 18 and 300 pounds, and I got on the scale and I was like, well, this is unacceptable. I'm going to do something about this. But I was told that like every day I needed to constantly be fighting to not drink. And I believe that's bullshit. But then I was told, well, you never had a real drinking problem, which is also bullshit because I was a problematic drinker. And when I would question things or look up facts, those were always refuted. I needed to have faith, and I don't have any faith. I have faith in myself, but not in any deity. And so I was thrown out. I got into a place that was terrible, horrible. There was no oversight. People were smoking crack on the porch. And I had, I spent most of my life around Jehovah's Witnesses. It was just culture shock after culture shock after culture shock.
Yeah, but you know this. What I'm hearing though, it's this. Yes, you're getting these culture shocks, but yet it's the same shit with a different label,
No, it's
and that's
I
all it
always
is.
I always say it's just a different flavor of bullshit.
Yeah,
It's all it is. And people like uh and I don't dislike everyone who is in Alcoholics Anonymous. But like had people tell me that I attacked my stepson, God allowed it to happen so I could get sober, and I told them to fuck off and die. I had people tell
God
me,
allowed it to happen. Jesus fucking
yeah,
Christ. God allows kids to get hurt so you can straighten up. Your God's
yeah,
still a fucking asshole.
yeah. And I had people tell me to not care what had happened because he wasn't my child. Fuck off,
Yeah.
and I have a portrait tattoo of my stepson when he was 6 at Comic-Con. I don't have a portrait tattoo of my little boy. I profoundly loved him. And I fell in love with him just like I did with his mother. I didn't haphazardly decide to be a part of his life. And I was so upset, and I just wanted to apologize to him, and everybody told me to just get over it. And I was fucking pissed off.
Hey,
I was tired of being told to get over my dad, and I will own that I made a mistake. I let my stepson down, but don't you tell me that I can't feel bad about it.
can I ask you to do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you open your book and read the poem that you wrote to your stepson at the end of your book?
The poem or the letter?
The letter, sorry, the letter.
I can try and get through it.
Yeah, because even I teared up when I read it. It's beautiful, and I think this will really show the audience how much you really love your son, because
Okay.
reading it myself, I felt your power.
Okay. So, one of my nicknames for him is Leviathan. I failed you. I hope that you have healed, and that you have never been in danger for me since the night I went to jail. In my dreams, I see you standing next to a police officer looking afraid. I don't remember what your voice sounded like. I have thought of you every single day. Your brother tells me about you, and I listen though it breaks my heart. I never wanted to become a monster, and if I would have seen it coming, I would have stopped it. I knew if I became your stepfather, there would be times you'd be angry with me, hate me, but I never expected things to play out the way they did. You were one of the great joys of my life. I cherished driving in my car with you listening to music. I adored making costumes with you. The concert I took you to was one of the best nights of my life because I got to share a band I loved with a person I loved. I miss cooking with you and playing video games with you. You used to dress like me, and that always warmed my heart. You were best man in my wedding. I'm sorry that I encouraged you to stay away from your family and friends. I thought I was saving you and your mother. I thought I could help you live forever. You were collateral damage during my existential crisis, and you never deserved that. If you hate me, I understand and I accept it, but I do hope it won't always be that way. I miss you, I love you, and I wish you the best. I hope you are happy, Leviticus.
That's just that's so beautiful.
Thanks.
It is. I mean, I'm tearing up. I'm crying with you right now. And this is what I want people to really get out of this, because all of this, everything that's led up to the point where you're at right now, started off with being in this fucking cult.
Yeah.
The lack of love that they showed you from the beginning, from when your father passed away, and how they treated you year after year, and always discarded you and threw you to the side like you were a piece of trash in the gutter, led to how you in it eventually acted out, to being drunk, to doing that to your stepson. And it's such a cycle of fucking bullshit, because it keeps on repeating itself, and this shit needs to stop. This is why I run this channel. This is why I want to get these stories out. People need to see what harm is being done. Not only has it harmed you, it's harmed those around you that you love as well.
Yeah.
And for
You know,
that, I am truly sorry that that happened to you and to your stepson. I really am.
you know, I was on probation 18 months. And when so the second place I lived in, I left and I moved in to where I stay now. And here I'm afforded a lot more free time. And I have my own little room, like efficiency. And I it was in this room that I conceived my book, Mentally Diseased. My father died when I was 13, and I thought, what if I die? What, I don't know my parents. You asked me questions earlier, and I don't have a lot of the information, and I'll never get it. And I wanted my son to know me. I love my stepson, and I did not violate the no contact order, even though I disagreed. I thought it was wrong, and I thought, I should have been given treatment because it was one event. It wasn't, like I had been in and out of jail my whole life. I really thought I should have got a chance, but I didn't. But I understand if he's angry, and obviously, I don't think he's around anybody in his life who even would encourage him to give me a chance. So I've come to terms with I may never speak to him again. But what I thought was, I remembered, of course, I was drunk, but it was in our first little apartment, and I bought him a dresser, and I was putting it together, and I was showing him how to turn the things to lock around the screws. And he told me, he said, "You're the best man I've ever known." And then I thought of his face next to the cop looking at me in terror.
Oh, jeez.
And what do you do that's big enough to challenge? Or not that I can make amends, not that I can fix it, but I needed to do something as big as I let him down. Sorry. My Xbox controller fell.
Gotcha.
I needed to do something big, and I thought, what's the biggest thing I can do? And I was like, I can challenge a cult, and I can write him a heartfelt letter because this book it was for him, and I don't know if he even knows I published a book. It's also for my little boy. But I thought I will challenge a cult. I will publicly say fuck you to Jehovah's Witnesses, and maybe one day he'll talk to me again. I feel like it should be on his terms. And I just, some people give me their opinions on the situation, which is fine. I don't ask, I'm not really even interested. It's just him and I had a deep relationship. I cooked with him. I spent time with him. I loved him. I really, really did. My ex-wife used to even say, you prefer him to your own child. It wasn't true. I just loved him in a different way because I chose to raise him. It was just,
Right.
it was a different love, but it wasn't diminished or any lesser. And, Jehovah's Witnesses, when my father was dying of cancer, they offered him a blood transfusion. He refused it. I don't think it would have saved him, but maybe it would have given me an extra day. They robbed me of my father, of time with him. They took my mother from me. They tried to destroy, my marriage, and it was ruined. I understand I messed up, but they were part of me losing my stepson. And my little boy, it was about the time I was kind of thinking, what can I do? He told me he was talking about Caleb, and I knew he meant Caleb and Sophia, that vile cartoon propaganda. And I very much feel that I have declared war on Watchtower, like personally. I'm not threatening violence or anything, but they need to be exposed. And when I was writing, there are things in my book that are embarrassing, but I really had to put my ego away because it's your story as well. It's the story for every ex-Jehovah's Witness, even though it's different. It's the same shit. It's the same abuse. It's the same toxicity.
Yep.
And, I don't know. It's been out, but it's February. So a little over 2 months. It's just been very surreal, but Jehovah's Witnesses are an evil organization. They really are. And they taught me to proselytize. Anytime I can work in, I was raised in a cult into a situation, you bet I do.
Yep.
You raised me to be one-dimensional, to be focused, driven, well-spoken. So I'm going to put all that shit right back at you, Watchtower. Like, I hope one day they say, who is this guy?
And I'll say, because you and I are the same age, that we're from the generation that Watchtower did train us how to speak. And I think that training was halfway decent, at least, with their old theocratic ministry school. They taught
Before
you
the simplified edition.
Yeah, before they simplified it. The old version, the one that we grew up with, where they gave you the council point, and I remember them announcing, okay, well, you got a G on your talk this week, or you got a W. You got that little bit of embarrassment, but you work to do better next time. And we
The
have
public shaming. Yeah.
that training, though, to speak up, which is biting them in the ass now, because now we can speak out against them. That's why I think they simplified it and changed it, because it's been biting them in the ass with the activists.
They want people who are just smart enough to do the tasks, but unquestioning, obedient worker bees. And, Watchtower used me up for what they could, and they threw me away to die, over 2 years ago. And, I'm not trying to be a leader among ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not trying to paint myself as a hero or inspiration. None of that. But I've always loved to write. And I released my book on my 40th birthday. That was the first time I ever celebrated it. And I really feel like I reclaimed that day. I do feel reborn.
Mhm.
And do I still have depression and sadness? Yes, but I am alive, more alive than I have ever been. And
And especially for the shit that you've been through, to be here speaking with me tonight, that is saying a whole lot.
yeah,
And not just to, you know, your life, but to you personally, of the perseverance that you have to have gotten to this point.
yeah. Thanks. You know, it's hard with my stepson because I don't want my interaction with him to be over, but it very well could be. In many ways, relationships are like organisms. If they're not fed and nourished, they wither and die. So if that's the case, I'm willing to accept that. So I think onward, and about a month before I published Mentally Diseased, I got a letter from my mother asking me to return to Jehovah and telling me that her doctor told her, because of the numerous people who died of cancer, that I should start getting tested for cancer, because it's likely I could get breast cancer. Or I mean, my dad had just cancer everywhere. It's not new information, but you know, I wrote to you and asked for help, mother, when I was in jail, and you abandoned me and you failed me like you did every time I needed you, you know. And if I would have got that letter when I was in jail, I think I probably would have gone back. But what that did is embolden me, because it made me think, oh, I've always kind of thought about death with my dad dying, but it's like, okay, so maybe I don't have that much longer. But even if I die, my son will know I challenged a cult for him.
Yeah.
And when you Google my name, it says author, and that is immortality.
Yes.
And I took the lie that Watchtower promised me. I claimed it.
And you were just reminding me of that convention part. I forget which year it was, when they had the girl who was disfellowshipped and she tried to call her parents and they wouldn't answer the
Yeah.
phone. And you know, in that video she said, "Well, that one little bit of communication might have made it feel like it was okay for me to stay out, right?"
Yeah.
That's basically what she said. And but in your situation, that one little bit of communication might have just taken you back in. That one little half an ounce of love and care might have been just that enough to have drawn you back in, but rather you didn't get that. And so it was like the opposite side of a magnet, and it pushed you away even harder,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know?
yeah, and it also so I plan to, what I'm calling, I call it the apostasy trilogy. And one of the things that my favorite features of my book is something that really, it's the cover, and not because it's me, but another ex-Jehovah's Witness, Sarah Riches. I hope it's Riches. She's Australian, but uh, she's a phenomenal artist, and she designed the cover for me. And I found a picture of me as a little boy when I was in a suit. And because I really think in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, I don't think it's healthy to constantly watch Watchtower propaganda, because it's made with intention, the way they speak, all of it. I just, I keep apprised of things that are going on, like Tony Morris no longer being a governing body member,
Right.
Yeah.
And as of the recording of this, that's just happened literally 2 days ago.
Yeah. You're
So
like, yeah. Hey, Tony, I wish you the worst, truly. But it, I I feel like art is very healing. For me, one of the few comforts I had was music and movies. That was just it. And I've always now I make art, I make abstract art. I've uploaded all of it that I have pictures of on my Twitter a while back. Um, and I just loved finding another XJW who's across the world, who I've never heard her voice, but that's just so cool because she gets it, like there's that immediate understanding.
Hmm.
And I want to I have two other books in the works, and each of the covers will be made by another XJW. And in mentally disease, I have a poem before each chapter. um, and I still had 100 unused poems that I wrote from 2002 to 2020, because for me, art was a safe way to kind of deal with my cognitive dissonance, even though I didn't really realize that's what I was doing at the time. But so I've compiled those into a collection that I'm calling Gangrenous Speeches, and I'm also writing a horror novella, um, kind of set during COVID, with kind of a fictionalized version of myself where a member of Elohim seekers, which they're the one true religion, becomes the Antichrist. And it's just kind of a big fuck you to Watchtower.
Yeah, yeah. No, that sounds awesome, man. Now, can I ask you, are the poems that are in your mentally diseased book before each chapter going to be included in that poem book as well? Or are those
No,
separate?
yeah, no. So there's one before each chapter, and then there's one that I wrote the night my son was born. Um,
Hmm.
and for me, I think in life, people have strengths and weaknesses, but people have things that they have an affinity and love for. I've always loved words. I always wanted to write a book, and it's like it's funny that one of my friends, she compared me to Walter White in Breaking Bad, to where he's just like, fuck it, I'm gonna do what I want. And like, I mean, but not like, hopefully I don't want to be as evil as him, or evil at all really, but like, you know say I only have a couple more years to live, like I'm gonna put out 3 books in a year. Um, and I also want to do things that were forbidden that I always dreamed of. Like I want to go skydiving. And for me personally, my paradise wish that I always dreamed of, besides seeing my father, the animals, my favorite is sharks. So I'm gonna go cage diving with sharks, which I'm terrified of. But I mean, I think you should challenge your fears. So I really think I hope maybe I don't want to use the word inspire, because that just feels like, but I want to encourage others to pursue their passion. If you want to do something, I think you should do it. If you want to try something, I think you should. And Watchtower, the meekness they instill, I think can become crippling almost, and people don't really grow. Maybe I don't want to discuss Watchtower policy. I want to pursue my dreams.
Yeah,
Whether I succeed or fail, that's what I want to do.
right. And that's why a lot of the videos I do, and I have done some videos on Watchtower stuff, but like I prefer to do interviews like this because I like hearing people's stories and getting them out there. But more than that, I don't want to sit there like other content creators and have to drone through hours and hours of Watchtower propaganda all the time just to create a video about it, because I did that for most of my life.
Hmm.
Listen to their crap, and I don't need to really listen to it and to know that it's still bullshit anymore. I've really moved past watching all the I mean, I listen to some videos here and there about, Watchtower propaganda or whatever they put out, and I keep up with the news and stuff about them, but like I'm not going to go through all their articles and all this just to find something to make content over, because that's just too much time, too much effort. I got a life to live. I got a family to take care of, and I do this channel in my own time when I can. I don't have like regular content like other creators do. I enjoy it, but like I don't want to also take away from my family and living my life just to do this
Yeah.
either. So, gotta find a balance in life, and also go pursue what you love.
Yeah.
You're out of the cult. Go do what you love as much as you can. I mean, not everybody can afford everything. I get that, but as much as you can, do what you can.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, I know one of the last time, I don't remember if it was it was somebody, it was a rebuttal or something, but it was of the convention where it shows the family in the field and like SWAT teams are swarming around them, and then it pans up to Jesus pulling the bow and it plays this music and Jehovah the victory is sure or something.
That was the last convention I went to in 2018. Be courageous.
Yeah.
I
And
remember that one because I was fully awake and I was disgusted by it.
yeah. And when I saw that, I like this panic just rose up in me and part of my brain started saying, "You're killing your son." And I just turned it off, and I cannot watch it. For me, people use the word trigger far too much, but it triggers me. I can't do it, and I really don't think it's healthy for someone to just constantly be inundated with that, even if you're critiquing it, because it has an effect on you. If you say it doesn't, you're delusional, I think, and it just there's more. I was in a cult, you were in a cult, but that's not who we are. I don't
Mhm.
even consider that half of my personality. It's
Mhm.
just shit that happened to me. I have passions, I have interests, I have things I love. And one of the realizations I had was just everything that makes me comfortable is bad for me. You look at these people who go from, abusive relationship to abusive relationship. They don't enjoy getting punched in the head, but they do it because it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's just human nature. It's what's known, the evil known is that, versus the evil unknown. And
Right.
so, I don't do risky behavior. I'm not doing anything crazy, but branching out, trying like spending time with people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses is difficult. Like not so much now, but last year I was invited to a Friendsgiving event. It was my first Thanksgiving, and it made me it was nice, but I would be lying if I said it didn't make me profoundly uncomfortable. And I don't know if people could sense it. It wasn't because pretty much everybody was drinking and smoking weed around me. It wasn't that. I'm not an alcoholic. I was a drunk, and I'm not. But it was just like I would just look at them and I'm like, you're in a room with worldly people. This is wrong. You're celebrating a pagan holiday. This is wrong. You
Mhm.
haven't been to meetings, and so this is wrong. And I sat in it for, I was there quite a few hours, and eventually I was like, I need to leave and just, rest. But I feel like you have to do exposure therapy like that.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't know that you can ever move on. I just don't think you can. I think you're tethered to it. It's just you have to confront everything about yourself because if you were born in, you were not allowed to fully develop into whoever you are, and you have to really challenge every single thing. I held a lot of offensive beliefs. I was judgmental, and that black and white mindset that cults instill in you is harsh and off-putting. Sometimes I'll hear people be very generous and kind, and I'm just like, fuck, what's wrong with me? Like, because sometimes I'll
Mhm.
hear shit and I just write people off and I start thinking, like, oh, and it's like, man, that's the Jehovah's Witness mentality, but I do think you can shed it, but I think it takes effort.
It does. And I'll say I'm almost 5 years out of being a cult. And from the very first Well, I was leaving in August of 2018. My wife was on board with me. We told the kids about a month later. And between August and December, we were still living in Tennessee and we were moving back here to Virginia in January. But between that time being fresh out of the cult, we did every holiday from there on out to through Christmas. I mean, we did Halloween, we did Thanksgiving, we did Christmas. There was even a couple of birthdays interlaced in there with it as well. And I know what that feeling is like. You're doing all these things because, yeah, you can now. Fuck the cult.
Mhm.
I'm living my life. But at the same time, you still have that little pit in your stomach like, this is wrong, but it's not wrong, but you've been told this your whole life, so you still have that pit and you just can't shake it. It gets easier over time, I will
Oh,
say.
yeah. It
Uh,
does. I feel like it's a reptilian brain response.
it is.
It's not critical thinking at all. It's just like reflex, and you're like, oh, this, and then you're like, well, I don't believe that anymore.
And then when you get those feelings, you need to just stop for a moment, pause, and mentally take a break and say, listen, body, brain, this is okay. You're not going to be hurt. You're not going to die. You're not being an evil person. It's okay. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy the celebrations in life that you have. And that's what I feel. I mean, I don't believe in any of the religiosity of any of the holidays or whatever, but I feel they're celebrations that you can take and enjoy life and celebrations of life, no matter
Yeah,
what the holiday is. So take those moments and celebrate that. Don't worry about the aspects of what they are or whatever. Just enjoy being happy, being with family, being with friends, good food, good times, and let it be just that.
yeah. What is crazy to me is, um, I work in a bar, and of course, a lot of people in AA tell me I shouldn't work in a bar because, oh my God, the horrible drunks, they're not living right, and they'll try and get you to drink and all this, and of course, Jehovah's Witnesses think worldly people are garbage. But outside of my son, I would say writing mentally diseased is the biggest thing I'll ever do in my life. I mean, for me, it wasn't cathartic. It was exceptionally painful, and but it was empowering. The only way I can describe it is, do you remember when in the second Pirates movie when Jack Sparrow is on the ship and the Kraken is there
Mm-hmm.
and he just steps into its mouth? He can't. He's not as big as them. That's what I feel I did to Watchtower. I don't think there's a Watchtower mafia or anything gonna come get me, but like to publicly confront them, to call them out
Mm-hmm.
is so empowering. When I and as I was writing, because I do want people, I mean, if Jehovah's Witnesses read my story, awesome. If other people do, awesome too, because that's probably even better because it can potentially prevent them from joining a cult. And um so on my Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, on December 10th when I published my book and I was no longer anonymous, I put my name, Micah Allen Losh. That was a really powerful moment. And I think it's funny that I think in Latin, or no, I think in Spanish, my initials mean bad. In French, they mean evil. And I believe in Latin, they mean wrong.
Yeah, in Spanish, your initials are bad. Yeah, I know that much.
Yeah. So it's just, and Mal was my nickname. When I was little, that's what my mom called me.
So what
Um,
what I should do in the edit is next to your initials there that you have, I should put just to the bone.
nice. That
Bad
is a
to the
good,
bone.
because I've never liked my name Micah. It always gets butchered, but I really view it as my Watchtower slave name. One of my good friends, she calls me Mal, which I mean, it's nice she does that, but I'm sure she has no idea how much that means to me because, like, it's almost revolting to hear my own name because it just think of the Bible and just, it's, but I don't know.
You could also be malcontent.
That's what I used to be on Twitter, malcontent.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Now,
And,
go ahead. Go ahead.
but like, on my, I've had really all positive reviews. I mean, I think one person I saw, I mean, I don't really like go looking for stuff. I saw one thing somebody said they couldn't get into my story, which is fine. Nothing is for everyone,
Right.
but like I have had people message me on Twitter, on Reddit, on Facebook, wherever, and tell me, that like I affected them or they wish me well. And that's such an amazing feeling. It's like at the bar. That's what I was trying to say. This book was important to me. I spent a year and a half. I funded it, the editing, the legal review. People at my work supported me. People at my work shared it. I think most people I work with bought it. One of my friends even she posed with me in a red dress because the phrase, the devil is a beautiful woman in a red dress, and as I'm holding a burning Bible,
Yeah,
and
those are some good pictures.
we did a little photo shoot, and like she didn't ask for anything, and then like I don't know, I don't know that I ever had friends before now. I don't know that I ever experienced that.
So one of the things I did, and it was probably about a year or two after I left. I was wanting to do it for a long time, as a way of symbolizing my escape and freedom from the religion. Is I got a tattoo. I've only got one tattoo, and see if
Nice.
and if you see right there that chain,
Yeah,
the phoenix is breaking the chain of oppression.
that's cool.
So, symbolic, of leaving the cult and, and that's what I love about being free from it. You can express yourself any way you want. And you're not going to get criticized. Oh, you got a tattoo. You're so bad. Oh, you grew a beard, come on, get on with that bullshit,
Yeah, so superficial, they are, and like it really is liberating to just to you can meet people and be like, "Oh, I like you," or "Oh, I don't like you."
Yeah.
And you're not just Watchtower, you're just in a kingdom hall and you find the least terrible people there.
Well, with Watchtower, you're expected to be friends with everybody in the organization.
Oh,
Period.
friendship is compulsory.
It
But
is.
yeah, at least in my experience, usually they wanted nothing to do with me. We had nothing in common. And, it was just like, oh, well, you're like not that great to me, but at least I'll have somebody to go to a movie with. You're just broken and acquiesce and it's just like, nah, it.
And a few weeks ago, I did a video about finding friendships after you leave the JWs, and you can't always expect that everybody that you meet after leaving to be your friend either, just because we all have a shared experience of being a JW. You have to learn to accept that some people are going to be your friends and others are not. Now, if we're all still working in together to expose the Watchtower or whatever, that's awesome. Doesn't mean we have to be friends.
No, I mean, you can tell somebody it's okay to be like, I don't like you, or
Yeah.
I don't care what you think. Like,
And it's okay that if you make a friend and you find out they're not for you to be a friend, whatever, it's okay to break off that friendship.
yeah.
You don't owe them a friendship. You owe
Yeah.
yourself your own peace and your own happiness. And if they're not contributing to that, they don't need to be in your life.
Yeah, one of the worst things is sitting there and thinking, I'm gonna have to live forever with these assholes, but then you're trying to imagine a perfect version of them. But it's like, well, the perfect version probably still isn't going to like me.
Yeah.
Like it it's so weird to have like fantasies, but as far as fantasies go, they're pretty shitty.
Yeah, they are.
you know, it it's just weird. I don't know, but and some XJWs I've met, and they're fine, whatever. And some I've really felt like drawn to and connected to, and and some I outright haven't liked, and it's okay. Like I don't wish, you know, harm on them. Just some of them I don't want to be around, or I don't
Yeah.
respect. Not everyone is going to like you, and it's not reasonable, but it's hard to shed that because you're always trying to have a good relationship with the Kingdom Hall, but you're always trying to have a good relationship with Jehovah, and you just really don't factor in much
No, you
because
don't.
it's just 100, 150 people that are all different, and there's no way all of them are going to like you. So they're setting you up for failure. So you're just constantly focused on bullshit.
And that's why when you leave, you need to take some time to get to know yourself and know who you are before you start branching out in other areas, because that introspective time is something we never got growing up in the cult. We always had to do their bidding, had to do it this and that. And we were always so busy with their shit that we never had time to think about it. So now that you've gone left, take that time to take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and figure out what direction you want to go in life.
Yeah. Well,
But
you can't trust your thoughts, as a
yeah,
JW. And I know me personally, like being in jail afforded me I mean, it was like a pressure cooker of introspection. I mean, there was human interaction and stuff, and it was loud, but like that, and then the 3 days following, and then, you know, I I really took a lot of time to look at myself really and scrutinize everything and just, you know, and the other thing is you don't have to be who you were. You know, you can make a mistake and move on. You can just let it go. Maybe you'll think about it. I mean, I think about my stepson every day. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. But I don't think about alcohol every day. I mean, I work in a bar.
yeah,
I see it, but do I physically think about drinking? No, because I said I wouldn't. It's really difficult where people just want to tell you about yourself, and it I don't know.
yeah. That whole, well, let me tell you something about you that you don't know.
Yeah, people, it's crazy because everybody has different motivations.
Hmm.
Everybody has different things that they find funny. I know me personally, I used to have a very, very dark, twisted, macabre sense of humor. But since all of this has happened, I've found maybe I've grown emotionally, but a lot of things really upset me, make me get emotional. And like, um, certain things I'm like, wow, I know way too many people who've been affected. Like, I'm not going to joke about that. It just,
Yeah.
you should evolve. And in a cult, you can't evolve because you're just always fixated on doing what you need to do to be a good member in good standing.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna wrap this video up here. We've been going 2.5 hours. Can you believe that?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, before we do though, let me ask you, is there any advice that you would want to give to somebody who is waking up and possibly considering leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, I would say what worked for me personally is I was too close to Jehovah's Witnesses to really scrutinize it. You know, you're not really dealing in reality. So how can you actually, even if you look at these things, like the Declaration of Facts, different things, you're taught that apostate lie, you know, there are apostate lies, there are these you know, satanic influences, and that really just muddles everything. What really made it clear to me is I just Googled cult tactics and I listed them. And I'd write it down and I would write down how it was implemented. And it was basically like I was just writing about my life. Every single one, just boom, 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 boom. They all happened to me. And then also just maybe, you know, if you watch documentaries or things about other cults, you will see similarities invariably. You know, it's nonsensical to think that, and so I'm an apostate. It's absurd to think that I don't want to see my mother. It's absurd to think that I don't want to be reunited with my dead father. It, it's just idiotic to think that that's the case. And, you know, you really just, you're so deluded. I think like you have to find an exterior way to analyze it, and that really gives you a more reasonable inroad to it, because your thinking is reactionary and emotional, and it's difficult. But I think if you value being true to yourself, if you're an individualist, you know, I think it has merit. And I think also you should reach out to people. For me personally, the XJW Twitter has been my favorite place. If you ever are in a dark place, you can message me, JW_N_AA. I will gladly talk. I've had clinical depression forever. I'm not full of sage advice. You know, I drank my identity away. And you know, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be a hero. I just would like to help people who suffer in a way that I think you have to have suffered similarly to understand.
And let me tell you, folks, that this guy right here, he will talk your ear off. Because and I say that in a nice way though, because you're really nice to talk to. You're a great guy, and like you started messaging me, and it just flowed. I mean, conversations just so easy, and you're easy to talk to, and you're just so raw and honest. And that's one thing I've appreciated about you from the beginning, is how raw and honest you are in your conversation. You know,
Cool.
and when you asked me to come on here and tell your story, you know, those conversations are why I was happy to have you on here, because of that. And I knew I would get that on the camera as well. So I want to thank you for doing that and coming on here and telling your story. And yes, I know this is the second time we had to do this because the audio
No.
on the first one sucked, but I appreciate your patience.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. You know, it's really great to interact with people who understand, you know, and yeah, I mean, my pleasure, James.
Yeah. And like I said, it's my pleasure to have you on here. What I'll do for you is whatever links you want me to put in the description to reach you, your Twitter, Facebook, all that, I'll put that in the description below for the final video. Any final words you want to say before we?
I just think like, you know, I do get emotional talking about things. I do get angry sometimes, or, you know, and anger is pain that hasn't been dealt with. Sometimes it can't be, but I think it's a disservice to just put this fake face on and say, I was an XJW and everything's fine. Because I don't think that's true. And people that are coming out of it should not be shamed for being sad, for grieving. I think people should be real. That's just how I am. I mean, life is often ugly and harsh and sad, but it connects. That is the one thing that connects every human being is pain. We all feel pain. Even if it's different, we all understand pain.
Yes, very well said. Well, with that, we're going to end this right here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you can. Also, you can catch me on my secondary channel on Apostate Weekly every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. We go live and talk about the latest JW news. Me and Ryan from Ryan Cultastic do the show. And as always, thank you for watching.